A carta de Paulo a Filemão tem um capítulo só, um capítulo com 25 versículos, e praticamente tem apenas um assunto. E quando nós lemos essa carta de Paulo a Filemão, e nós lemos essa carta de maneira desatenta, lemos essa carta de maneira superficial, lemos essa carta de maneira piedosinha, buscando ensinamentos práticos para a vida cristã. Quando nós nos aproximamos dessa carta dessa maneira, o que é muito usual da cultura religiosa, nós corremos um sério risco de ler essa carta como uma carta que legitima a escravidão. Simples assim. A carta de Paulo a Filemão pode ser a base bíblica da escravidão. Porque foi isso que ele disse. E então Paulo escreve a Filemão dizendo o seguinte: olha, Filemão, eu estou mandando a você de volta, seu escravo fugitivo Onésimo, não mais como escravo, mas como irmão. Mas o que está escrito nessa carta é que há um escravo fugitivo. E Paulo manda que o escravo retorne ao seu senhor, correndo o risco de receber uma punição severa, talvez até ser condenado à morte ou ser sacrificado como escravo, mas, no mínimo, receber uma punição muito severa e exemplar. E Paulo manda de volta ao seu senhor Filemão, o que é muito estranho. É inimaginável nos nossos dias que um homem chegue, por exemplo, aqui na Ibabe, dizendo: eu fugi, eu sou um imigrante, e eu estava confinado em condições de trabalho semelhantes à escravidão, ou eu estava escravizado mesmo, a minha família ainda está lá, ali no Bom Retiro, e eu consegui fugir, por favor, me ajude. E eu digo assim: como é o nome do seu senhor? Como é o nome do seu dono? E ele dissesse o nome, eu dissesse: é um líder aqui da nossa igreja, é um homem de Deus. Volte para lá, continue sendo escravo dele, porque ele é um homem bom. Você consegue imaginar isso? Isso é inadmissível, mas é isso que a Bíblia está dizendo na relação entre Paulo, Onésimo e Filemão. Falar sobre a importância do amor, a importância do perdão, e eu poderia construir uma mensagem dizendo assim: olha, Paulo está orientando Filemão a perdoar o seu escravo fugitivo, e recebê-lo como escravo, restituí-lo em sua propriedade na condição de escravo. E isso seria ser bondoso. Não é possível um senhor de escravo ser bondoso. Não existe senhor de escravo bondoso. Não existe senhor de escravo generoso. Mas eu poderia fazer uma mensagem sobre isso, porque é isso que a Bíblia está dizendo. A gente fica numa situação muito embaraçosa, porque ela reafirma, legitima a escravidão. No mínimo, não a confronta. Mas quando você diz assim: pastor, como é que você aconselha essa moça desse jeito? Fala: não sou eu que aconselho, não é a Bíblia, é Deuteronômio 22. Que uma moça que for violentada no meio do campo, se não estiver prometida em casamento, basta que o abusador indenize o pai da moça e case-se com ela. É isso que a Bíblia orienta. Então a gente precisa atualizar a Bíblia, porque se eu não atualizo a Bíblia, e se eu leio literalmente e digo: está suficiente a leitura literal da Escritura, eu legitimo escravidão.
What Paul presents in this letter is a powerful countercultural message. Slaves often did run away because slavery was not pleasant for anyone. But slavery, when you ran away from it, could cause worse problems, because if you were a runaway slave, you'd have a price on your head. Wouldn't just be a beating, it could even be death. And so, what to do? Now, you might think the best thing would be for Paul simply to help him escape. Say, here, we'll get you some money, we'll send you somewhere else, just forget about everything, start a new life, you'll be okay. That wouldn't always work, because as a slave, Onesimus may have had a mark on his body, a brand or something, which would reveal to anyone who he met that he was in fact a slave. We might think, and we might want, Paul or some other great Christian leader to say, this is a wicked institution, it stinks from top to bottom, we just need to get rid of it. But even those who had socially reformist ideas in the ancient world knew very well that you couldn't just say it like that, because if suddenly you have thousands and tens of thousands of people suddenly out of work, unemployed, suddenly on the loose, that's very dangerous for them, never mind for everybody else. What we see Paul doing, like some other thinkers of his time, but actually in a different way to how they do it, is putting a time bomb against the whole institution by actually insisting that people are treated as fully human beings, with responsibilities, with rights, with duties, etc. In other words, they're not just chattels, they're not just artifacts. There's much more to say about slavery, of course, than that, but that may at least help us get some critical distance on what's going on in a letter like Philemon. And we can see the shape of what Paul is doing. He is reaching out one arm and putting it round Onesimus, and he's reaching out the other arm and putting it round Philemon. And he is joining them together in his own person. In other words, Philemon, join me in abandoning the old ways, the Plinian Savinianus ways of looking at the world, and see that now God is doing a new thing. And it's a reconciling thing. It's a cross-shaped thing. What God did in Christ for the world, God is doing in Paul for Philemon and Onesimus. And that is hugely costly, as it is when someone comes to faith in Christ, so it's going to be seriously costly for Philemon and Onesimus. And here I think we see the knife-edge delicacy of Paul's strategy in writing this letter and giving it to Onesimus to take back to Philemon. He isn't writing a letter which Onesimus will be able to have striding into Colossae, say, I've got a letter from Paul and he tells you you're to set me free, so that's all right, isn't it? No, there's no sense of that. Onesimus has got to go back and presumably apologize for what he has done, but in giving the letter, trust and hope and pray that all will be well. And Philemon, who is probably well known as a householder in the small town of Colossae, Philemon is going to be asked to do something almost unthinkable, which is to take back a runaway slave into his household and to welcome him back not just as a slave in disgrace, but will maybe forgive it for this time, but no, as a beloved brother in the Lord. What will the neighbours think? They'll think, well, maybe my slaves will run away to Paul, and then he'll send me a letter as well, and then what'll happen? The whole world will turn on its head. Well, maybe it would. But Paul is here sending a signal which demands humility and trust from both Philemon and Onesimus. Something new has been launched in the world. It's not a big thing with a fanfare of trumpets. It's something that happens household by household as reconciliation happens, as people look on from down the street or from the neighbouring town and say, did you hear what just happened? This is a new way of doing things. We've never thought of living like that. And that is, of course, how Christianity spread in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, when the Roman Empire was doing its best to stamp it out, because people were sharing, people were living differently, people were looking after one another, people were forgiving one another, sending signals to the world around that there is a world of difference, there is a new way to be human, that a new way has been launched upon the earth. And that way comes from the gospel of Jesus himself, Jesus crucified and risen, Jesus the Lord of the world, the Messiah of Israel, who has inaugurated a way in which Jew and Gentile, slave and free, male and female, can find a fresh way of living, a way of reconciliation, a way of peace, a way of hope, a way of love. That's what the letter to Philemon is all about, and it takes us to the very heart of Paul's gospel and to the world of difference that it made then and can make today.